First and foremost, thanks to all of you for taking time out of your busy schedule. The most valuable commodity you have in your life is your time. And so I really appreciate you taking time to be here. I think it's extremely important for elected officials to be there and be in the community, not wait for you to come to me in City Hall, but to be in the community and listen. I think God gave you one mouth and 2 ears for a reason. And the real goal for me in doing these town halls is to really get interaction from the community, kind of hear what some of your thoughts are, and hopefully we can take your thoughts with us at City Hall. Now I will tell you, people don't always agree, but what I always have been a firm believer in, you can agree to disagree without being disagreeable. So hopefully we can have a very good dialogue. I want to make sure we have interaction. And I would like, I would be remiss if I didn't start. Jen does a great job for our city, but I'm very pleased and honored to have two of my colleagues here. Oh, excellent. Good timing.
I'm back here.
Natalie Mosier, let's give her a round of applause. Mark from the airport. In the back. And again, my goal here is to be in all 5 regions in Huntington Beach and do a town hall at least once a quarter. And again, to get your interaction. For those of you that don't know me, I thought I would give you a little bit of my background, just so you know a little bit about my background. I've been involved in public policy for quite some time. I actually was a chief of staff or a member of the state assembly, and then I got elected at a young age when I was 27 to the state assembly. I did 3 terms in the state assembly, and I did 1 term in the state senate. And then that was in a different region, and then I met a Huntington Beach girl, moved to Huntington Beach, and been here, been active since 2018. And I was fortunate enough to get enough votes to be across the finish line as your councilman, and I was very fortunate to become mayor. There's a lot of things going on at City Hall. One of the things that I think that's very important to me is to cut the red tape and roll out the red carpet for small business and business in general here in Huntington Beach. One of the ideas that we're going to be coming here very soon with a proposal is what we call a one-stop shop. That staff will have one crack at your permit and go through and say everything you have to do from A to Z, and then so forth. The ball's not the line's not continually moved, saying, well, I did this, but now this department says I have to do this. It's one of the big complaints that I had from a lot of small businesses. And I will also say, we have amazing staff here at Huntington Beach. And I know Chris Long is here, but everybody who's a staff in Huntington Beach, please raise your hand. Not raise your hand, stand up. Please stand up. As much as me as mayor, and I think I speak for all the council members, it's really the staff that makes things move, and we come to them all the time, and we want to make sure we stay on top of those issues. But the city owes a debt of gratitude for the hard work that our staff does for all of us here in the city. The other thing that is in the news, and and again, we can agree to disagree on some of this, is the city council majority is fighting back on Sacramento and some of the what we call arena mandates. It really is interesting for me on a personal note because I still remember, and I will just tell you a quick story. When I was a young assemblyman, I think I just turned 30 years old. And at that time, Gray Davis was governor, and at that time, he was unbelievably popular. In fact, he was talking about becoming president of the United States at the time. He was actually campaigning in New Hampshire. And he refused to disclose these long-term energy contracts, these long-term 25, 30-year energy deals. And I remember at that time, I thought it was unacceptable that he wouldn't share with the people what he's spending of our taxpayer money to keep the lights on in the state of California. So I asked him to release that information, and he used the terminology called executive privilege and said pretty much, no, I'm not going to release that information. So in our government, we have a form of government that has checks and balances. And so if you think that something's not right, you have an avenue. That avenue is the courts. And so I took him to court in a lawsuit, Strickland v. Davis. Under the Public Records Act, I took him to court. And I'll just, say, imagine this. I'm 30 years old. You can visualize. I'm 30 years old. I'm the youngest member of the legislature. I walk into our Republican caucus. Now, each caucuses get together, and I walked into my Republican caucus, and I said, I'm suing the governor of California over these energy contracts. Who's with me? And say I didn't get a warm response is an understatement. In fact, a lot of the members, my Republican colleagues, took me outside, they put their arm around me, and they said, you're going to end your political career before I get started. You should drop this, because you're in the worst office in the Capitol. The governor has all his power. You're going to end your career before it even gets started. Now, that was a gut check time for me, but I knew it was the right thing to do. So I went in, and not only did we sue the governor, we won court. And what happened was, we found out through the court disclosure that the governor locked in these 15, 20-year energy deals that are a higher price than the worst price during the spot market. Energy companies have bad PR, and then they end up renegotiating those contracts, and we save ratepayers billions of dollars. Now, the reason why I share that story with you is because some people could agree to disagree. I believe it's fundamental for Huntington Beach to push back on these housing mandates. I believe when you talk about what's coming from Sacramento, it's fundamental in the fact that I believe if we went along with what the governor's trying to mandate, this city becomes an urban city. And when I've been walking door to door, when I was out there in the community, I heard time in, time out that they love the coastal suburban community that Huntington Beach is. And I've also talked to folks saying that we already have too much traffic. That we have traffic on Beach, that we have traffic on Edinger, we have traffic on Golden West. In fact, when the new In-N-Out came in, most cities just celebrate for a new In-N-Out. I got complaints about how much traffic there will be on Edinger. So I think it's fundamental. I do think that there's a philosophy in Sacramento that tries to get rid of suburbs. They try to, it's what I call a war on the automobile. There's a reason why we have the highest gas tax in the country here in California, the reason why we have the highest car registration fee. I fought those fights when I was in Sacramento. But again, I believe in the suburban life that we have here in Huntington Beach. Nothing wrong with an urban life. In fact, if you want to live in an urban center, you could go to, you can go to LA, you can go to San Francisco. Some people like rural living, like my former colleague, Doug Lamalfa. They like to live on a farm, and they like rural living. And so I fundamentally believe that it's upon us to push back. And quite frankly, the governor says we have this huge housing crisis. Well, if that was true, he would actually have a housing mandate for his home county of Marin. Marin, his home county, has zero in the way of mandates. And I repeat, zero. In fact, 95% of Californians live in 5% of the area space here in the state, and there's no incentives whatsoever from the governor to build anywhere in that 95%. For example, in San Bernardino, they want to build. They're eager to build. The Board of Supervisors, but the state of California prevents them from doing so. And so I just think it's fundamental for us. And when you look at some of the other cities that are our size, like Torrance, they have a minuscule number, and we have an enormous number. So I think it's the right thing to do, and so we're moving forward, and we're pushing back. And again, it's our right. We have a separation of powers here, and we also have checks and balances in our form of government. And in our form of government, we have the ability to take it to court. Now, some of those say, hey, we might lose, or we might spend, we're wasting taxpayer dollars. Again, I think it's fundamental. The one reason, I can't tell you how many other cities have called to thank us for doing this fight. And other cities are different than Huntington. Other cities don't have their city attorney. They don't have an elected city attorney on a fixed budget. Other cities have to hire outside counsel. So it really prevents them from doing this fight because they'll have to hire a firm like Tan Tucker and Nat Phelps that charges $400 or $500 an hour. And so it just precludes them from fighting. And most recently, our city attorney, Michael Gates, just won a $25 million lawsuit. And quite frankly, if that was another city, the outside firm would actually get contingency fees, and they wouldn't get that whole 25 million. And so with that, public safety is one of my top priorities because, look, I think it's the most fundamental role of local government is public safety. Make sure you're safe in your homes and your schools, and in your business. And so the reason why on this first town hall that I'm putting forward, that I asked fire and police to be here, because normally we've done a lot of community coffees, but I know a lot of the questions have to do exactly with what's going on in terms of our public safety and what's going on in terms of fire and what's going on in terms of the police. And so I'm very grateful that we have our representatives here. But with that, as was introduced by Jen, I want to just give you an overview, but I'm here to hopefully answer a couple questions before I turn it over, because I do have another speech tonight, believe it or not. But again, I will just say this, whether you voted for me or not, I represent all of you. And I want you to know that you call, and if you need to meet me at any time, I'm going to make myself available to you. And so I want your input, and that's why I'm here. And I want to represent you. And I do believe when we have interaction, I become a better mayor, I become a better council person, because I take your voice with me to City Hall. And so with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions you have. Go ahead.
So from my understanding, the ADU applications are still being accepted, but they have to fall under zoning code law, right?
Well, ADU applications are being accepted, and they're being processed.
Okay.
And you know, my understanding is no holdup whatsoever on any of the ADUs.
Okay.
And then I know we're going to be dealing a little bit more with the ADU process on the 21st, when I met our council.
So I support the lawsuit that you guys filed, but my concern is high density buildings.
Mm-hmm.
My least concern is ADUs.
I agree. Yeah, and so we're processing. And again, high density is what I'm talking about, these high density, high rise apartments. And by the way, if you're not familiar, the state asks you to do this declaration that says, and normal, any development project that you have to go through what we call CEQA, which is the environmental review. You have to go through reviews and how this affects noise, pollution, how this affects wetlands, how this affects traffic, how this affects your smog, how this affects, the sidewalks and the streets and the roads and traffic. What the governor's asking you to do is to make this declaration that says your housing crisis supersedes any other concern that you have to have. And by the way, I believe that's a freedom, a First Amendment problem. Yeah, exactly. Any other questions? Go ahead, Amy.
Yes, Mr. Amory Hanson, a big fan of 3 minutes at the City Council.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask about the ADUs as well. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't there something about how those ADUs can help with the regional housing allocation? I mean, we're not going to probably ever. Does that help?
Yes, it does, and we'll be going over that process on the 21st.
Yeah.
And I know you'll be at the council meeting.
I'm always there.
Yeah, I know you are. So we'll be dealing with that specific issue on the 21st. Any other questions? Go ahead.
I just have a comment. The only reason I knew about this was from next door. I just happened to open it and there it was, and you were going to be here. I wish whoever is in charge of this would publicize it a little bit, or I think you'd have a much bigger turnout.
Okay, we'll work harder. We'll work harder at making sure it gets out there. Okay, we'll definitely do what we can to make sure we get it out there better.
Yeah, it wasn't on the calendar for the 16th.
Okay.
Nothing popped. It wasn't.
If we could talk afterwards, I'd love to see which calendar you're looking at.
Okay.
We have our website, Serve City Break, which is where we usually put all of our events and everything city related, and it is populated on that calendar, but I want to make sure I'm touching everywhere that everyone's looking at. So you may be looking someplace different, so if we could talk afterwards, I would love that, so I can make sure I have it where you guys are looking as well.
Go ahead, sir.
Thanks for the birthday.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you. Happy birthday. Happy birthday. Anything else? Okay.
So where are we at in the negotiations with the police and wages for hiring additional officers.
So I can't go into details because it's what they call a private session, so we're barred from really discussing in detail where we are in that process. I can just tell you from my standpoint, we're 25, 30 officers short, and we need to fundamentally do what we can to make sure we can get what we call lateral moves, meaning when you spend money on a law enforcement officer and they go through the academy, it's a lot more money that you spend getting them trained and take some time to get them up to speed. Whereas if we do a good enough job, hopefully we can go and pick off some law enforcement officers from Orange County Sheriff's Department or down Laguna Niguel or some of the other area, Long Beach and some of the other areas. So I can't go into details, but my goal is that we get fully staffed and do what we can to get those lateral moves, because again, I think public safety is fundamental. But I would like to push really hard to get that done soon.
Are we going to be able to fund our obligations for pensions?
We have to, and we have to come up with ways that we can get that done. I mean, the bottom line is that's part of the system, and when we're competing with other cities and counties for law enforcement, we have to understand that that's the system that we're in, and we have to account for that.
What department oversees like neighborhood, like slurring of streets and all that kind of stuff that happens in neighborhoods? What department oversees like the streets and the neighborhoods and slurring of streets and
Would that be
who is this?
Crumby's Department, Public Works.
Public Works.
Oh, right here. Go ahead.
Yes, the Public Works Department, and I can come around and answer any questions that you may have.
Like I said, they make my job very easy. That's right. But let me know if I could be involved in that process to help with
Thank you.
whatever issue you have.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Why do we have to be responsible for homeless people outside of our area? You know, Newsom and Garcetti said, come on in, we'll pay for everything, come to California. No, I don't agree with that. Homeless people from right here in Huntington Beach, okay, fine. But to have to deal with people from other states, other countries, I'm not agreeing with that. That's our tax money.
Yeah, I agree with you. And in fact, a lot of the homeless that come here are sober living homes that advertise in the East Coast, and they come here. Once their insurance runs out, they get kicked to the curb. I also believe, when you look at fundamentally government responsibility, really it's the county that's responsible. We get a lot of federal funds and a lot of state funds for homelessness. But at the end of the day, when we're walking door to door and they see homelessness down on Main Street or they see homelessness around, and the county isn't doing what we want them to do, we're going to do what we can from our end to try to help solve that problem to get the homeless off the street. And I believe that we should invest more into the state, and I'm going to keep lobbying the state, for mental health funding, because a lot of the homeless problem comes right down to a lack of mental health funding. A lot of these are veterans that are PTSD as well, and we need to get in the Trellis program as a great program. And I know my colleague, Mayor Pro Tem Gracie Vandermark, has been one of the leaders in terms of working on this issue. But I agree with you. We don't have an unlimited budget, and whatever we do, I think it's important that we measure whatever we do. And when we spend dollars, we need to spend those dollars efficiently.
Yeah, that's an interesting point about the sober living homes.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of is a tie to Huntington Beach.
Mm-hmm.
But does the city consider that a tie to Huntington Beach? Like in the sense that they're welcome to Navigation Center?
I'll have to find that answer out. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that.
Because it kind of is, right? Like
Yeah.
at least a sober living home should take some responsibility there.
Yeah, and I
They're
don't know.
stumping them out.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I can get back. In fact, I'll leave my cards here and grab a card, and we can follow up. I can get that answer for you.
It's very effective.
Anything else? Go ahead.
Is there any limit to ADUs? I live in a cul-de-sac, for instance, and if every person in there built an ADU, which there's room for, it kind of makes it a little crowded.
Yeah. I don't know the answer to that. And again, if I can leave my card, you can email me. Because I know Ursula's not here. I don't see her. Oh, you are. You know the answer. I'm sorry. I didn't see you. I'm sorry, Ursula. I apologize. Maybe you know the answer to that.
So there are some regulations related to ADUs, but generally they are allowed on properties. There are some size restrictions, some minimum setback requirements, so if they can fall within those parameters, then they are allowed.
So my whole cul-de-sac or my neighborhood, every one of the homes could become an ADU.
I would need to look, if you want to give me your address, and we can look at the, I need to see the product. It's case by case, so it's dependent on size of the lot and some different factors that I would need to look at to be able to answer that question very accurately. But generally, they are allowed, but there are circumstances where they might not be able to fit based on dimensions of properties.
Okay, I'll close and introduce Mr. McCoy. But let me close with this. Again, bottom of my heart, I appreciate all of you for being here and taking time out of your busy schedule. The one thing that I hope that you get away from this is I will be accessible. You can ask me questions and I'll get back to you. I do want to thank my colleagues for all being here on the council. And please talk to them as well. And I also want to thank staff for taking time for being here today. I really appreciate it. We're going to be doing a lot of these, and so I apologize in advance. But I think it's important for us to be out in the community, not just waiting for people to come to City Hall. So again, all staff, I want to thank you for being here. And I'll just say, I got the privilege of serving in the Assembly and the Senate, but being mayor of Surf City and Huntington Beach is one of the biggest privileges I've had. And I love this city, and I'm going to fight for this city. And I just want to thank all of you, and it's just an honor to represent all of you here. Without further ado, I want to introduce Mr. McCoy.
Hi, good evening. My name is Eric McCoy. I have the pleasure of serving with our fire department as the Deputy Chief of Operations and Emergency Response. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of an overview today of our fire department, what we're all about, who we are, and some of the things that we do. So here you can see our org chart. It's a little blurry, so I'm going to give you just a real high overview and then we'll move on. So our fire chief is Scott Haberly. He's here up on the front. And our fire department's broken up into two major divisions. We call them emergency response and operations. That's just what I'm in charge of. And then my counterpart, Deputy Chief Tom Andre, he's in charge of our professional standards division. So I'm basically in charge of like all the outward facing, all of our folks you see on the fire engines, on the beach, and our marine safety division. And then Chief Andre is in charge of all of our internal operations, our fire prevention, our administrative staff, promotional exams, recruitments. And so we're kind of the two that sit right underneath the fire chief. Under me, we're going to talk a lot tonight about our emergency response. We have a battalion chief that's in charge of training and EMS. And then we also have our marine safety division. We have Chief Dearman, who's in the back, who runs our marine safety division. I spend a little bit of time on this slide because this is really kind of gives you the gist of our fire department. So who are we? We have 200 full-time staff, 149 roughly safety employees, and 53 civilian staff that work mostly upstairs on the 5th floor at City Hall. We also have about 225 to about 250 seasonal lifeguards that we bring in every summer. You see them up on the lifeguard towers driving around on the lifeguard trucks. We serve roughly 200,000 residents, 10,000 businesses, with about, depending on who you ask, they say about 11 million visitors each year. Most of that's down at our beach. We function out of 8 fire stations, so we have 8 engine companies. Those have dual function firefighter and paramedics on them. 2 of our truck companies, those are located on the both ends of town at our Murdy station and at our Murdy station and our lake station. The truck is the big apparatus that has the aerial ladder on top. And then actually we have 8 emergency transport ambulances in the city. 5 of those are on for 24 hours a day, and 3 of those are what we call peak hour day cars, where they're only here for about 14 hours in the times that the city gets really busy. What's interesting is I started as one of our ambulance operators, and when I first got here in about 2000, we had 3 ambulances. And now we're up to 8. We increased during COVID, and it never, like the call volume never stopped. So I'm going to talk about call volume here in a little bit, but like we're really busy with 8 ambulances. And that 8th ambulance that we actually added at our Warner Fire Station at Warner and PCH, because as we looked at our response times, we realized that was an area where we were getting some slower response times, and that ambulance has really drastically increased the response times in the harbor area. Some of our specialty units, we have a Type 1 USAR team that's typed with the state. Actually, 2 of our members left yesterday. They're up in Tulare County, and we partnered with Anaheim and the city of Orange, and they went up to help out with some of the flooding that's going on in Tulare County. We have a Type 1 hazmat team, and then this isn't even updated, just in the last, I would say, week, we have a Type 1 decontamination unit. So as you know, we are hosting more and more special events in our town. Our town's getting busier, and one of the things is we have this decontamination unit. This is now the first type decontamination unit in the state and even the nation. So it's pretty cool. It can decontaminate rapidly up to 1,000 patients. And so it's something that we're really, really proud of that just happened in like the last week. We're what's called a Class 1 fire department. So you may see the words Class 1 on the sides of our fire engines and our fire trucks. And that's a rating that's given to us by the Insurance Services Office. And it directly is reflected in the insurance premiums that our residents and businesses see. Some kind of cool information, there's only like less than 180 Class 1 fire departments in the United States, and only probably, I think it's 19 or 20 in the state of California. So that's something that we're really proud of. We've had that since 2004. I know these slides are a little hard to see. So our call volume, our average over a 3-year period, we ran 54,952 total calls. Roughly 45,000 of those are medical aids. And we've had 1,243 fire calls. So the chief will talk about this all the time. One of the things that we're really proud of is we really consider ourselves a data-driven, community-centered fire department. And what that means is as a fire department, we're constantly looking at the data to ensure that we're providing the appropriate services to every area of the city. We're sending the appropriate resources. We have the appropriate number of people going to different calls. And so that's something that's really near and dear to our hearts. You can see number of calls outside of California over the last 5 years. We had 3,058 outside of Huntington Beach. And we had 150 days with 530 personnel deployed out of county. So we participate in what's called the California Mutual Aid System. And so it's one of those systems where we give into the system because when we need it, we're going to get it back. And so you'll see our firefighters up all over the state responding and helping other communities on wildfire, and we get reimbursed for the state 100% on those responses. And like I said, we have 1 4-person engine company in Tulare, and then we have 2 members of our USAR team that are up there right now. They left. I think they got there last night. So we're super proud of that. Some of our community commitments and things that I'm really proud of right now, we're working on a program called the Heart Safe HB Initiative. And we're the only city for the most part in Orange County and only a couple cities in the state where we're really going to focus on the out-of-hospital cardiac arrest survival rates. So one of the things we know in the state, throughout the United States, is people that go into cardiac arrest outside of the hospital, it's like a 1 or 2% survival rate. And we're seeing that there's other cities across the United States, especially in Seattle, where they've just some things that they're doing in the community and with their fire departments that are raising those numbers. And so we're really excited to get started with some of these new programs. You'll be seeing those. We're going to be putting out signs and social media posts. We're going to be hitting pretty hard this next year. The other program that we have is our junior lifeguard program. It's probably one of the most popular programs in the city. It's where over an 8-week period, we bring 1,500 young folks from the ages of 9 to 16. You've probably seen them when they're all over the beach down there. That's something that we're really, really proud of. And then our home safety visits. We performed 86 free home safety visits and installed 333 fire extinguishers. This next part I'm going to talk about is community risk reduction. So like I said, the chief and our staff, we're always talking about this community-oriented, data-driven fire department. Well, as we know that our call volume is going up and up every year, right? We're anywhere from an 8 to a 10% call increase every year. We recently just ran the numbers, and we looked back at a 20-year period, and our call volume has increased 92% over a 20-year period. So like, we're getting busier and busier. And one of the things that we're really proud of that really no other fire department anywhere around is doing is we're realizing like it's not sustainable. So what we're really doing with the data that we're pulling is we're trying to prevent those calls before they happen. Historically across the United States, fire departments are very reactive, right? Something bad happens, you pick up the phone, you call 911, and the red fire engine and ambulance shows up at your house. We're historically have been really bad at being proactive. So one of the things that we're doing right now is we're running a ton of data every single week in the fire department. So like a great example is, and I'm going to show you some of the district maps that we have in a little bit. If we know that we have an area of the city where we know that our 65 and older population, they're calling 911 because they're tripping on throw runs. Well, one of the things that we're going to do as a fire department is we're going to do a bunch of outreach in that specific area over throw rug safety, right? So our goal is that let's prevent the calls before they happen, and that's really what our community risk reduction division is going to be all about. We also perform our fire prevention inspections, so we did over roughly 10,000 fire prevention inspections last year. We do plan checks, fire prevention inspections, a bunch of good stuff going on in our community risk reduction. And then we have our marine safety division. Our marine safety division, those are our lifeguards. So we cover from Beach Boulevard all the way to Sea Point. Then we, as you know, we have Bolsa Chica State Beach, and then we pick up our jurisdiction again on Warner, and we have all of Sunset Beach. As well, now we have Huntington Harbor. 34 lifeguard towers, 3 rescue watercraft, 3 boats, 7 ATVs, and 18 Toyota lifeguard trucks. Last year, our incidents, we had 68,140 total incidents, 33,440 preventative actions. So that's us, actually the lifeguards in the lifeguard towers. They see somebody that's getting in an area that looks dangerous, like a rip current. They're going out and they're talking to those people before they get in the rip current and get pulled out, and we have to make a rescue. And then obviously stingrays, 4,522 stingray injuries. So depending on the time of year, the tides, the surf, the water temperature, we have some days where we're just so busy with stingrays. And has anybody ever been stung by a stingray? Did you go to the lifeguard? Did he give you the bag of hot water?
No.
Okay.
I said I got a big inspection on that.
All right. So today I want to show you, so these are what we call our first in areas. These are the areas where that each one of our fire stations are responsible for. So you can see our most busy station is Gothard Station, which is our station 1. You'll see the number 41 on the side of the engine, running about 21% of our calls. And you can see when you look across the city, about 83% of our calls are medical aids. 9% of our calls are service calls, so those would be like going on automatic fire alarms, elevator entrapments, helping a family or a business board up their building. 5% are what we call other emergencies. Roughly 2% are fires, 1% are hazmat, and then our regional emergencies, we had about 2 or 3 of those last year. That's where we have a major incident in the county and everybody is sending resources. And like I said, right now our call volume's up anywhere from 8.6 to about 10% from 2020. And then in this area of the city, and I know Captain Garcia is going to talk about the way his map lines up for this area of the city. Really for this area of the city, a majority of the time the units that are responding are from our Murdy Station 2, our Gothard Station 1, or Edwards Station 6. So that area encompasses about 8.8 square miles, and the total population served is 4,140. This area here in the city, in 2022, there were 8,670 calls. Total unit responses were right around 27,000. And this area of the city made up about 39% of the total calls in the city. And then if we drill down just a little bit more, it was about the same compared to the whole city. About 85% of the calls in this area were medical aid calls. The three major call types were general medical. So that means someone just calls 911, they don't give a ton of specifics, and they just say, I just don't feel good. Or somebody's hurt, and they don't give us a ton of specifics to the dispatcher. 12% were falls, and about 11% were unconscious, unresponsive, or syncope, which is fainting. That's it. Yeah. Awesome. I'm going to turn it over to Captain Garcia, and I think we'll do a question and answer after.
Hello, I'm Oscar Garcia. I'm going to talk about the police department. Ours is a little bit different. The organizational chart, we actually have 5 divisions. I oversee the patrol division. That's all the patrol officers you see, the black and whites. I have 4 lieutenants that work for me. They're called the watch commanders. And then we have 12 squads, 12 sergeants with patrol officers. Then we have the special operations division. That's where handles traffic, our Aero Bureau, Homeless Task Force, our Downtown Food League, and also the Special Enforcement Bureau, which is our SWAT team, Mobile Field Force, our Mountain Enforcement team, and our drone team. We have the Investigation Division, which is comprised of 2 different bureaus. We have the General Investigations, which is crimes against persons, and General Investigations for property crimes, and then economic crimes. On the other side, we have our Special Investigations Bureau. They handle narcotics, vice, gangs, crime task force, and we have an intel unit. We gather all the intelligence when we have special events. We have the Administrative Division. Again, we have a captain overseeing that, and that's where our professional standards works, our IA, as well as our training and recruitment team. And then we have our Support Services Division. That's headed by Kristen Miller, and she handles communications, which is our dispatch, records, property, when we book evidence, so buys, property needs to be released, and finance department. As Montoya was saying, our map, what we did, we divided the city into quadrants, right? And each quadrant is a lieutenant, one of our watch commanders, is in charge of that quadrant. We have the Northwest Area Command, which is Golden West, West Stop, Norfolk Tower, that's Lieutenant Altenbach, that's his phone number and email. This area is the Northeast Area Command, and it's by Lieutenant Yasha Bukidi, that's his phone number and email. And then we have the Southwest Area Command and the Southeast Area Command. Additionally, what we have 2 other areas is the downtown area, which is our Lieutenant Brian Smith. He oversees our downtown food field officers. And I'm in charge of the OP Area Command, which falls under the Northeast Area Command. These are our area command in the Northeast area. These are our statistics. As you can see, our property crimes usually have gone up. That's a nationwide problem. You might see in the news about our bravery crews, how they're organized. And then obviously we have our violent crimes on top. What we do is we use our statistics to foresee or forecast where the crimes can be happening. And then our undercover units, our crime task force, or either start doing surveillances and some of the suspects that we have identified. And then one of the biggest issues, obviously, is traffic collisions. This is for the whole city, not just for the Northeast Area Command. But right now we have injury collisions, we have total of 79, and it's broken down by how many percentage e-bikes. I'm sure you guys saw hear a lot of complaints about e-bikes and pedestrians. And then our biggest intersections where most of our traffic collisions happen are listed right there on the top of it. What we look at is what's our primary collision factor. Primary collision factor is what caused the accident. Most of them, as you can see, is at safe speed or driving under the influence, DUIs. We have a big, with the state, we have a OTS run for conducting DUI checkpoints, and we have 2 officers that work strictly DUI enforcement. And obviously targeting those particular areas. Yes. Questions?
What's going on with the e-bikes? My granddad wants to get them.
So
they're dangerous.
Yeah, obviously they're dangerous. So one of the things we've been real proactive. We're doing on social media. We do a lot of education. We also started a program with the Marina High School. We're gonna try to pass on to other high schools and do some type of education. The problem with e-bikes is we want to make sure people are wearing their helmets, and it's just the unsafe speed at the speed that they're going through intersections. That's the biggest problem.
Yeah, but they ride on the bike path. Where are you?
Yeah.
miles an hour.
So one of the things we got is we will send our traffic units over to the beach. We have done that before. because part of the grant that we have is education and enforcement regarding bikes. We'll actually have trailers on the bike path on the beach. I'll tell them how fast they're going, and we'll stop them and talk to them. Our primary goal is education, not so much enforcement all the time, right? So we want to educate people.
You guys can make a fortune giving tickets.
That's right. Reducing traffic accidents.
So involving all bikes, the e-bikes is a part of that, so 7 out of the 11. And then involving pets is 10.
Yes.
So those are people walking.
Yes.
So more people are getting hit walking than e-bikes.
So far for this year.
Yeah, that's crazy too. I'm amazed because I see the kids riding e-bikes and it's crazy, but I also walk.
Yeah. So you gotta remember, we have some streets, PCH, right? Pacific Coast Highway at nighttime, speed, it's dark, people crossing the street, you gotta look at that, Beach Boulevard. Also at nighttime, you got more cars speeding. If you notice, our primary collision factor is always on safe speed, it's 21.
Yeah.
I've been reading about the Citizen Academy, and somebody said that it's no longer happening, so I'm wondering, is it still happening? And I've been here for 38 years, my entire life, and I've never heard of it, so is there any way you guys can push it out more? No?
So Citizens Academy, so there's a couple different Citizens Academy. There's a citywide Citizens Academy, which we'll be bringing back in April. We typically do one a year, and that is an 8-week program. It's a one night a week. And what you do is you get to come into City Hall, meet with a different department every single week, and understand the operations of City Hall and the city as a whole. The police department also has a Citizens Academy as well. I know you guys are coming back.
We started 2 weeks ago, so we brought it back. It's a 9-week program, and it's all about learning the police department. We break it down kind of same slides, learning about the divisions, and then we have officers working each division coming and talking, each unit. And part of it is going on the right on too.
If you're interested, since the police one has already commenced, that may not be available right now, but the city one will become available in April. One night of that 8-week program is with the police department, and then another one is also with the fire department as well. So if you want to learn more, you do have an opportunity there. We will be promoting information soon on our social media of how you can sign up and how you can register for that if you are interested.
All right.
Now for Deputy Chief on the fire, so you mentioned the cardiac program.
Yeah.
Is there now, or is there consideration that business establishments or hotels with a certain capacity of individuals would be required to have AEDs on site?
So technically, there's no code that states that you have to have an AED on site. But one of the really important parts of the program we're going to be starting is number one, our staff going out and educating on the importance of AEDs. And then us getting into a registry where we know where all the AEDs are at. And then we want to get all that stuff. There's an app that's called Pulse Point. And you can look and you can see all of our calls every day. And then it geolocates you. If you choose to do so, it'll tell you, hey, within a half a mile of where you're at right now, there's a cardiac arrest. And then if the AEDs are in the registry, it'll tell you where the closest AED is to that cardiac arrest. So a big push of this new program is the AED registry piece. So yeah, we're going to be pushing just AED education and trying to get as many as we can out into the field and then getting them into the registry.
I got a question for you. Does the police have a website like Pulse Point that tells you where there's a traffic accident? We pick everything up off Pulse Point, so we know where the traffic accident because of the fire department. Is there something the police department has that also?
So what we do, and we're actually working with our PIO, we'll put it on social media when it's like a singular, right? If there's an accident, traffic's gonna be closed for a substantial amount of time, we'll put it out on social media.
Because getting across Beach Boulevard sometimes is terrible.
You see Citizen app. That's, I think, something like that.
Yeah, question for both departments. What's your average response time for emergency calls?
That's a great question. I don't have it right off the top of my head. I'll give you my card and I'll get it for you. I don't have it like right off. Do you have it off? I'll give it to you. I want to give you like the accurate number. So I'll give you my card and I'll send it to you.
So the second part would be, is that, once we know that number, how does it compare to other agencies? Are we top, bottom, middle at that time?
We have a standard, right, where we say we want to get to the incident scene within less than 5 minutes, 80% of the time, and we're doing pretty good. And then one of the things that we're looking at, like a good example of that is when we're looking at the data and we're doing this like on a weekly or monthly basis, we're making operational changes based on the data we have. So a good example would be, we have a map and it shows the response times. If they have not met our standard, that they get highlighted in red, right? And we'll look for those clusters of those red areas where we're not meeting that response time goal. And so a great example of that is we noticed on our emergency transports, the ambulances, that we were starting to get a lot of those red clusters in that harbor area. So within like a week of us getting that, we put that ambulance in service at the station at PCH and Warner, Station 7. And then the next time we ran the data, we had way less red. And so we're looking at those numbers like I said, on a weekly or monthly basis, and then shifting our operation to make sure that we're accountable to that.
So, I'm sorry.
Just, I was traveling about 5 o'clock a few months ago to the city hall, and there were 3 or 4 full fire department emergency response teams going down Gothard. It was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
On the way there, between going and coming, there were at least 3 to 4.
Like code lights and sirens? Like code calls?
Yeah, they were big calls.
Okay.
Moving fast.
Yeah.
We were glad. I mean, I was glad, but it was kind of frightening too that we have so much emergency, so much of an emergency going on within that time period.
And especially, so we call that area, and it's kind of Gothard. We call that area the corridor because we have obviously our 2 busiest stations, Gothard Station and Murdy Station, which is down like Gothard and Edinger. And that area of the city that we call, like internally we call it the corridor, is the busiest part of the city. That's where 50% of our calls come out of that corridor area. And that's kind of where like our downtown station is too. If you were to draw like a line down the city, they're all kind of down that middle corridor area. And that's a really busy area of our city. Roughly 50% of our calls come out of that, what we call the corridor area.
Thank you.
Doesn't that potentially create a problem if we tie that into the high density housing and the prospect that some of those high rises could be in that corridor? If there's no change to infrastructure, does that create some challenges for fire and police to use that and have a good response time with additional traffic and again, no change to infrastructure?
Like I said, we're looking at the data like nonstop, and then we're obviously taking that and making recommendations for what we need to do to adapt. So yeah, that's happening all the time.
So just let me address that question. So for police, it's a little bit different from us because we have different priority calls, right? We have priority 1, priority 2. Unfortunately, priority 2 or 3 would be something like care home, you've been out for a while, and it looks like someone broke into your house. If it's considered like someone may be inside, then that's priority 1. Our response is quick, right? That's priority 1. We get there within a few minutes. The ones that can be more delayed are reports, right? Someone wants to report something that got stolen. It's not an emergency response. Then maybe get a priority 2, depending on how busy we are, the time of day, the day of the week. Those may be fluctuate. We also look at that for staffing levels. When do we need more staffing, depending on the day of the week.
And for priority, I believe priority 1, the department is right around 4 minutes on average. The national average is 6. So we're well below the priority 1 average call time here in Huntington Beach for police.
Yeah, about the increase, is that in all age groups?
Yes. So we're like we don't like have the data that says like that shows like right now the increase in like necessarily every age group. I will tell you we do know that like a significant number of our calls come from that 65 and over age group, and that's going to keep rising just based on the demographics of our city. You know that.
Because they have continued to shift older and older over the past few years.
Yeah.
So, do you anticipate maybe like, how's that going to change? Especially like, it could not keep increasing depending on how the demographics shift. Or
yeah, I think if we even look at like a 10-year average, like our call volume is going up pretty consistent every year, and that's it's like super consistent. The line is pretty steady.
But so it's not, is it not disproportionately seniors? Or?
That's a great question. I don't know if we
necessarily have that data on that specific like age group.
Okay, okay. Just like, it seems like it could be a metric that would be worth tracking, you know, like
Probably, yeah.
average age of college.
Yes, that slide with the lieutenants up there, the emails, that's a very nice slide. I don't know if it's on the police department website, but I would suggest you put it up there.
It is, but I'll verify, but it was updated. We just had some promotions, some of our lieutenants are new, and I know we updated it with phone numbers and names. But I'll make sure that it gets updated.
And then my second comment was, and this is just a prop to Public Works or traffic engineering. On Delaware, north of Main Street, on the west side, is all painted red zone. Apparently it's been like that for over 20 years. They painted it red because there was some day laborers hanging out there 20 some years ago. And nobody ever thought to not paint it red anymore, since I think they're all hanging out at Home Depot now, or Lowe's. But the reason I'm telling police, the city traffic engineer replied to I sent a request to the app to kind of have that evaluated. Maybe it should be painted red because parking is very, very difficult in that area. I don't personally live there. My 81-year-old mom lives in that area and she has to hike it, half a mile because there's no parking. So if you open up the red zone parking on the west side of Delaware, it free up about 40 spots for people that live in that area, including my 81-year-old mom. The city traffic engineer said it's coming to the PD to evaluate the situation. So just kind of heads up, maybe give.
That was recently?
Yeah, about a week and a half ago.
I'll get with the traffic lieutenant, because I'll go to him, Lieutenant Archer, and I'll get with him.
Yeah, I'm no expert at all this, but I don't think there's a reason to not have it red anymore.
Alvin, who's here, a representative from Public Works, is that something that maybe you can take back to traffic engineering and just ensure that that's something we're aware of? I imagine there's probably some sort of traffic study that was conducted prior to that curb being red, but maybe that's something you can take back to our traffic engineer?
Yes, so when I get back to the office, we'll talk with our traffic engineer, Bob Sachowski, confirm that he did receive the request and it's gotten to him, and we'll make sure that we look at the traffic and the alignment of the parking and see if there could be any adjustments that could be made.
Yeah, he's the one that emailed me back within the same day as I submitted it to the app, which was very impressive. Just take a look at it. 40 spots in that area is right by the Trader Joe's and everything. It'd be real vital.
I was just going to say, about a February ago, we had a neighborhood watch during the virus, and we had 35 people or so in, and the officers just did an excellent job, and your community services person, and I would highly recommend that. It really brought the neighborhood together, the whole kind of neighborhood, not just a small area.
So under our division, we have our community outreach officer. She handles all the community. I'll give you information. I'll give it to her so she can contact you and organize. I'll probably be with Lieutenant Mikeden, and then we plan to bring that back again.
Okay.
Why did they change the parking going down Springdale? Like you've got the bike lane here, and then the green little posts, and then the cars parked right next to the, like next, yeah. Why did they do that?
So the parking north of Springdale, I can give you my card because I personally don't know.
The parking protected bike lanes that were just installed on Springdale. So reason being for that is it's just it's kind of a proven traffic calming measure. So what happens is that's a pretty significant thoroughfare that we're challenged with speeding on. And what the kind of traffic studies have proven is that if you rearrange the structure and put the parking of the vehicles a little bit closer to the lanes, that actually slows down lanes of traffic. That gives people the impression that they're right next to a vehicle. So it's kind of twofold. It calms traffic speeds along the corridor, and then additionally, when vehicles are parked there and people are utilizing that bike lane, there's kind of an extra barrier just to protect bicyclists, and those numbers that we did see for bicycle-related accidents should hopefully go down based on that kind of reconfiguration.
Yeah, but it seems more like a traffic hazard with the car being right parked there next to the driving lane.
So the hope is that with the vehicle being there, you're going to be a little bit more mindful of that vehicle being there and slow down just a little bit, because
Have you had any accidents because of that lately?
That would be something we have to ask our traffic engineer who tracks that data. Off the top of my head, I couldn't tell you, I haven't looked at those numbers. I just know kind of the reasoning for that reconfiguration and traffic calming measures throughout the city. But we can definitely talk to Bob and get that information and let you know.
Okay, thank you.
I live right there. I live off Warner and Springdale, and I can tell you that I have not seen any, but that doesn't mean anything. I mean, I'm at City Hall probably a majority of my life anyway. So.
That would be a car hitting another parked car instead of a bicyclist.
Hitting the car because you're not used to the car being there.
Probably better than hitting a bicyclist though.
That is the hope. I mean, that's part of it. So it's definitely a change, and it's not something that we're used to seeing in the city. But the reason being for it is kind of that proven methodology of it calming down traffic speeds and also gives a second barrier of protection for any bicyclists along the corridor.
Looking back at a couple of the major events that we host, like the Air Show and the US Open, and I know we're served by multi-agencies for that, but with respect to our fire and police, are the service calls during those events within tolerance, considering the number of visitors, or did they put an extra strain on our resources? Or can you talk to us a little bit about how we react to that?
So we talk all the time. So the Air Show is one that's hard for us to staff. And when I say it's hard for us to staff, what I mean is we're staffing on what's actually happening versus what the potential is. Mm-hmm. So I think now that we've had the Air Show for a couple years, like I think we've got that number dialed in where we have enough staff down there that if something catastrophic happened, we could handle it. As far as the medical aids, last year, it was for us on the fire department, we only had a few medical aids. Like it was nothing crazy like we've seen with some of the other events. I want to say we had less than probably 10 medical aids the whole time of the Air Show. So very manageable for us.
So for the police department, I would say it depends on which special event it is, right? Air shows can be different from the US Open. So for us, the way we do it, 2 years ago, we created a new division, special operations. So they all go ahead and handle the special event and see how much staffing we have without affecting our regular patrol. So then we staff it based on how many people we expect that they're going to be there, and that's how we will staff it. The air show, whether we deploy our mobile field force, they are used to handling big crowds, and then that's what we do. It's a police presence, and obviously our calls are not a lot unless someone gets drunk and, you know.
And like Captain Garcia said, we do the same thing, right? Our goal is when we have a special event, we don't want it to pull as much as possible resources from the rest of the citizens in the city that are used to having their resources in their fire stations in their neighborhoods. And so we'll bring in extra people to staff those events.
And then also just kind of taking into consideration, there's a pretty rigorous permitting process that the city goes through with the event operators leading up to the event. And as a part of that process, our special events permitting team does work with PD and fire to find out what resources may be necessary, and then communicates that with the vendor and works with the vendor to potentially cover any exponential costs or anything above and beyond what the normal service calls would be.
And even the special events, like she said, they'll bring their own security, which is what we want, and we kind of just oversee the whole thing. Kind of let them handle themselves unless we need police presence.
What is the parameter that your ambulance can?
Well, can you go to UCI? Or do you have?
So UCI is what we call one of our trauma centers. And so we go to UCI probably a couple times a day. We'll take patients there. And then we really try to do our best to take people to the hospital that they want to go to, because that's just the best place for you. If you have all your doctors and all of your medical records at UCI, we understand that if we take you to Orange Coast Memorial, like that's an undue burden on you, and we definitely we have empathy on how significant that can be for somebody that has to go to the hospital. So we'll do our best to take patients to their home hospital.
And then I don't see any questions right now, but I had one follow-up. There was a question earlier with regards to individuals who potentially leave sober living homes. Do they get the advantages of going into the navigation center? If someone is here not a resident of Huntington Beach, but is here in a sober living home or something of that capacity and they leave, they are not technically considered a Huntington Beach resident, and those resources in the Navigation Center are not available to them.
What if you're a resident of Huntington Beach and then go to the sober?
Then those resources would be available to them.
Okay.
Seems like we should hold the sober living homes accountable for that.
Yeah, I'm sure that's something that we work through. I think the sober living home debate is a pretty broad debate. You can obviously see, I know there's a lot of discussion happening in Costa Mesa and some other cities locally on a much larger scale. So I think right now there is a lot of talk and a lot of debate of what they should be held accountable for and how they should manage that. So I'm certain a lot more will come out.
Yeah, it's like you go in there and it doesn't work out. I mean, it's not like it's easy to get home, or for some of those people there on the East Coast, maybe their family just wanted to get rid of them, sick of them, send them out to the West. And it's kind of not their fault, but then they can't really get help here. And I mean, how do they get home?
What I can say is that we do still have our homeless task force, and even though they may not be considered a Huntington Beach resident and may not be able to get into our Navigation Center, we do have our homeless task force that does respond to calls for service, and our social workers work hand in hand with individuals who are experiencing homelessness to try to get them support, whether that be, I just want to get home, and us providing them with a cell phone or something like that so they can reach out to their family in another state. We do also work with a lot of nonprofits that provide resources that could potentially provide them with the money to get an airline ticket in order to get them back to that place. And then in addition, if they do come from another city, we have a lot of contacts and networks with other cities throughout the state and throughout the country, realistically, that we can reach out to, and we can make those connections and see if that city can provide services for that individual. So a lot of that is being done by our social workers and our homeless task force officers.
Yeah, just as like a super person that doesn't know anything about it, it feels like some of those are really shady, like scams or something, like, you know, like they bring people in, they probably don't, like, do they have like a real, like, accredited methodology for treating these people? I don't know.
I don't know enough about it to speak intelligently. All right. Any other questions before we wrap up?
In our neighborhood, there's a business around the corner that, I don't know, it's an auto dealership, and they don't have enough parking in their auto dealership. So they come and park in our neighborhood. There's probably anywhere from 15 to 20 cars that park in a cul-de-sac that's right off the aisle. And we tried contacting them. They go, we don't have enough spots, but they have a whole lot full of cars. So how do you deal with that? Most businesses at one time had to have enough parking for employees. But when I called the city, they said, no, that's not really true anymore. But
I'll get your information, and I'll get with our parking control supervisor and also with code enforcement and see what we can come up with.
okay, thank you.
All right. So I think that's kind of all the questions we had. So thank you all for coming tonight. I think this was really great, and we look forward to doing these. We're going to try to do these on a monthly basis at various locations throughout the city, as the mayor mentioned. And anyone that maybe has a need to follow up, feel free to do so. And thank you for coming.
Thank you.